At the beginning of every year, we're always filled with such excitement and anticipation for what this newness brings. We have New Year's resolutions. We believe that God is speaking new things into action. And there's always this anticipation that is just filling the air with what God is going to do in this new season.
This year was particularly special for us as we began to step into 2021 knowing that it was time for us to begin releasing some of the things that God has been speaking to us about, some of the dreams that we have been developing over several years and watching them begin to come to life. So we kicked off the year letting all of you know about the things that God had been speaking to us and beginning to launch those things into a reality.
Yeah, and it's always a really special thing when you see something that God has been speaking come into action.
Yeah.
Whether you are a business owner where God has given you a vision, God has given you a plan, and you start the ability to execute on that thing, or if you want to start growing a family and then you start growing that family and seeing children, whatever it is, seeing something come to pass that God has spoken is always an incredibly special thing.
Absolutely. And so as we journey through today together, as we spend these moments together, I want you to spend some time reflecting on your own life as we share our story, as some people you're going to hear from share their story. What is your story in the midst of it, where God has spoken to the dream that you have, has breathed on a dream that He placed in your heart in quiet moments, and you've begun to see that thing come to life? I hope that you'll reflect on the journey of the dream in your life coming to action today.
Our journey began 11 years ago. We were in a service in church, and we had a preacher ask if someone in the service was trying to have a baby. We were at the time. I have 3 daughters, and he has a daughter and a son. We were married over a year, and we don't have any kids together, so we wanted to have a baby. We tried for like a year, and we didn't get pregnant. So we went up and got prayed for, and he prayed over us and said that you guys will be fruitful and multiply, and you will have a baby. 11 years go by, and nothing. We didn't get pregnant. We didn't prevent it, and didn't happen. So about 8 years ago is when we were like, God gives doctors, things like medicine and stuff like that to help us, so let's do fertility. So we went the route of fertility, and that didn't work either.
If I can get the mission statement on the screen of that statement, it says, we declare Jesus everywhere, and we lead believers in a life of resilient faith. The beginning of that starts with a very intentional pronoun. We, all of us together. It's not you declaring Jesus. It's not me declaring Jesus. It's not your neighbor declaring Jesus or a volunteer team leader declaring Jesus. It's we, what we collectively can do to declare Jesus everywhere. I believe that it takes all of us bringing our time, our talent, our creativity, our resources, everything that God has given us into the storehouse, submitting it to God and saying, God, what are you calling me? What is my role that you're asking me to do and to be part of in the midst of all that is happening? What can I do to see this vision come to pass, to see this vision accomplished? Because we are so much more powerful together. We bring so much more strength than just one of us, than just I, than just me. Do you remember our first date?
Of course I remember our first date.
What do you think our first date was?
I feel like this is a trick question, but I think that our first date is when I took you ice skating.
Nah, that's not our first date. I think our first date was when you invited me to go on the walk on the trail by the beach.
But that one doesn't count because that one was just, I'm a poor student, and so I can't afford to do anything, and so I just took you on a walk. The first date that I invested financially in our relationship was when I took you ice skating.
Wow.
And then I took you to Burger King afterwards because I used all my money on ice skating and had no money left for the meal.
You did, that's right. That's okay, I'll give you that. But the other one is our first date because that's the first time you invited me to something that was not
that's the pre-date.
Dinner at your parents.
That's the pre-date. Yeah.
And before that, when we had dinner at your parents' house, what's that? That's
just the greeting.
Just the greeting.
Yeah. That's
the intro.
The appetizer.
But what I definitely remember, either way, about all of those, especially that first dinner that we had at your parents' house is how much we spoke about things about love in action, things about seeing the practical demonstration of who God is in people's lives, seeing what we can do about, getting out and reaching and touching people and where people are and helping people and seeing lives transformed and seeing someone light up when they experience the light of Jesus for the first time.
Yeah.
And how much of our relationships since then, how much of our dreams and our goals and the things that we talk about have revolved around this idea of how do we reach more people for Jesus? How do we see more people helped along the way?
Yeah, I think that we almost did our dating experience backwards a little bit. Like it was probably our 10th date before we started talking about like what music do you like or like your favorite movies and those kinds of things. Our first few dates, like the walk and the ice skating and those kinds of things, those dates and those conversations, like you said, were about love in actions, about a pursuit of biblical justice, about what it means to be Christians today in this time that God has placed us on earth, and understanding and studying theology. Those were the things that we talked about in our initial dates, and I was so drawn to this person that wasn't trying to pursue climbing the ranks in some business or just accumulate an enormous amount of wealth, but someone who understood generosity.
And I think that thought of making sure that everything that we do is sharing Jesus with somebody else, everything that we do is demonstrating who he is really what began to be so attractive to us as we stepped into this leadership role, is this realization that we can multiply the effect of what it means to declare Jesus in our community.
Absolutely.
We can multiply the effect of what it means to see people raised up in their faith, to see people standing in their faith and living out their faith. And that's been the amazing thing as I reflect on 2021, is beginning to see some of those things come to life in such an incredible, such a beautiful, powerful way, as we have seen lives transformed this year, as we have seen our community reached into, as we have partnered with over 56 different organizations throughout this year. And that's what you've done all year, is you've shown up and you've gone to places and you've demonstrated who Jesus is with skin on right here, right now in our community. And I love getting to see that. We've invested over $75,000 worth of hours into our community this year, simply because you've shown up, you've volunteered your time, and you've gone to those organizations who every week are on the front lines of helping somebody's life get back on track, of filling in the gap for someone, of helping train someone in a new path where they need some instruction or someone to come alongside them and hold their hand. And that's what we've been able to do. And it's so cool to see that initial dream that we had sitting on the corner of your parents' dinner table begin to come to life in such an incredible way.
And even some of those values that you just talked about that we had from early in our relationship of generosity and partnership and collaboration and those kinds of things. One of the other values that we have is community and relationship and authentic, vulnerable relationship with each other. And so it's such a value of ours that we wanted to make sure that that was expressed in our church experience as well.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure that our church wasn't just somewhere where people came and received maybe a good message and then left, but people left changed as a result of the experience that they were in, that they had a place that they could share that experience with other people as well. And so we've been diving deeper into what that looks like. And practically, we wanted to make sure that there was an environment where people could be in relationship with each other.
Yeah.
Just practically, we started investing in making coffee freely available for people around weekend experiences. And so this year alone, we have served over 4,000 cups of coffee, which creates a space for people to be able to interact with each other. And I've so loved walking around the sanctuary spaces and seeing people with a cup of coffee in their hand, connecting before and after service and talking about all the things that God is doing through their life.
And it might seem like a small thing. It might seem like a thing that doesn't mean something. But part of what we believe the role of the church is, the role of the believer is to break down barriers and create pathways that help people experience that great, loving community, that help people experience experience who Jesus is. And something as simple as a cup of coffee can help me lower that barrier in my life. Something as simple as offering someone a cookie or, something to eat before and after helps create that pathway, that bridging experience where all of a sudden I can breathe a little bit easier and genuinely walk into experiencing Jesus for the first time in my life. Everything that we do is part of the mission statement that we launched at the beginning of this year, that we believe that we are here to declare Jesus everywhere and lead believers in a life of resilient faith. It's what I want for your life. I want your life to be a declaration of who Jesus is, and I want your faith to be resilient, to walk you through every single season that you face.
So through this journey, we really had to rely on faith. We're not the youngest people. We're now in our mid-40s. We have a blended family, teenagers, young adult in their 20s. So we had to really lean on God, especially after moments when the doctor said it was not possible, when the medicines did not work. We had to really lean back on God and focus on the promises that He has placed upon our life.
And through this faith journey, 11 years is a long time. So like I said, we did the doctors, visits for fertility. And you see other people having babies when we were in our 30s, and you're like, oh, and you always have that in your heart. I had that promise, but it never happened. So was that really real? Honestly, if I'm being honest, you question, you're like, well, what happened? Did I do something wrong? Is it something I did in my past that I didn't get this blessing? We're married, we serve, we give, we, do all these things, but we had this promise and it was prayed over us and we didn't get anything. Like, how is that, you think about it and you watch other people. So for me, I blocked it out. I went to a place where I just forgot about it. I'm like, well, you know what? We're good. We have the grandkids. We have enough kids of our own. We have 5 together, so we have plenty. And then we just went on with life. We just didn't talk about it anymore, neither one of us. He knew it was hard on me. It was hard on me to get that disappointment. Every time we would take a test, it would be negative. And so he knew it was hard, so he kind of just said, hey, you know what? We don't have to try this no more. So we just let it go. We let it go for a while, for years, and we didn't talk about it anymore. After New Year's, we're in service, and at the end of the service, Pastor Meredith says, okay, someone here who thought that their womb was dry it's not. God didn't forget about your prayer a long time ago.
It is the resurrection that verifies the authority of Jesus. And in Christianity, death always precedes a resurrection moment. So you might feel like you are at your darkest as we step into this next year. You might feel like you don't know what's going on. You might be looking at a business that's holding on to life support. You might be crying over a womb that still doesn't have a baby as you step into another year. But I have good news for you. The darkness that you're feeling might just be the seed form of your miracle, because Jesus is setting you up for a Lazarus moment in your 2021.
And I looked at Mike, and I remember I said, that is not for us. And he's like, stop it. And because I am laughing, and you always feel like the pastor looks at you when you're when they're preaching. And so I am cracking up laughing. And I'm like, no, babe, he's like, we used to pray that, stop it. And I'm like, okay, all right. And so anyways, we go home, but still, I'm still in denial. The next service, we go, and Pastor Phil, he preaches about the Shemanite woman.
Well, she has no son, and her husband is old. And so Elisha says to Gehazi, call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the doorway. And he said, at this season, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son. And she said, no, my Lord, O man of God, do not lie to your servant. Elisha is trying to find some way to serve this lady, some way to repay this lady. And she says, no, I'm good. I'm fine. I don't need your help. I'm good. Truly, I'm good. How many people do you know in your life that are just like, they're fine? Like when you try and help them, when you try and do something for them, they're like, I'm good. I'm fine. don't know if you know people like this. I certainly know people like this, that they're just like, I'm good. I've got my barrier up here. I'm independent. I'm good. I don't need your help. This was a fine woman. This woman was just like that. She was fine all the time, right? Her house said that she was fine. Her clothes said that she was fine. Her smells said that she was fine. But the thing that said that she was not fine was the thing that you could not see. And so often the thing that is not fine is the thing that is on the inside of us. And the thing that was on the inside of her was broken. She acted like she had no need, but the need that she had was on the inside of her. She had all this wealth, she had all this stuff, she had all this influence around that area, but what she needed, what she wanted, she wasn't able to get on her own behalf. She wasn't able to purchase it. Her wealthy possessions weren't able to get it for her. Her influence wasn't able to help the fact that she was barren on the inside of her womb. And there are some things that money cannot buy. There are some blessings that only God can give on the inside of your life that you cannot achieve for yourself.
One of the things that the ancient Hebrews had that was such a beautiful practice is they had these specific moments throughout their life, these specific moments throughout the year where they would create memories together, where they would mark a moment, where they would mark someone's changing of a season, where they would mark something that God had done for them. And they became such memorials. They became part of how they told their story. And when I look back at our year, sometimes we don't have all of the things in our culture that they had that went around it, but we still have these specific moments that become memorable parts of our story. Moments like child dedication, where we saw 14 kids, 14 families come in and say, we're committing to raising our child in the things of God. We want a blessing for our family. We want a blessing for our child that we walked with this year, where we saw 44 people make their next step with Jesus and get baptized, go into water and have this incredible moment that becomes a memory, that becomes a memorial before God that says, I made a decision publicly to have my old person lay down and my new person stand up. These memorable moments are important parts of seeing our dreams, seeing our journey come to life.
One of the other special things that we did this year was to have a special Sunday that we called Big Game Sunday.
Yes.
We knew that it was going to be football themed. We knew that people were going to be wearing their jersey of their favorite team and all of those kinds of things. And I got to preach a message on that day that kicked off a series for us called All I Do Is Win. And it was such a special day as we leaned into what it meant to be a winner and to overcome the things that the enemy has been doing in our life, because God has called us to victory. So when these doctors told my brother and my sister-in-law that their baby had Turner syndrome, it's essentially like it's a death sentence, right? And they have been told, your child is unhealthy and your child is not going to live. And so they go to the doctor to receive more information about these results. And the doctor says to them, hey, I know that you guys already have 2 little girls, and this is a diagnosis that's incredibly inconvenient, that's incredibly difficult to receive, and so I just want you guys to consider your options here. And you know what that means, right? I want you to consider your options here. You've already got 2 kids, so why worry about this one? This one's inconvenient. Don't worry about this one. You've already got something that's good, so let's focus on this one. And so my brother and sister-in-law said to the doctor, thank you so much for your information and your feedback and your perspective, but there are no options for us. We are going to continue with the pregnancy. And so as some time went by, they started telling their close friends and family about this situation and encouraged us to pray. And so we gathered together and we started praying, we started fasting, and we started declaring the goodness of God over this situation. We started praying for a miracle. We started declaring Jesus over this situation, that there would be a miracle in the womb of my sister-in-law and that there would be breakthrough in this situation. And so the months go by, and every scan that took place showed less and less evidence of Turner syndrome inside the womb. Scan after scan showed that instead of this baby getting worse and worse, this baby was now getting healthier and healthier, getting bigger and bigger and stronger, all the way until the final scan just a couple of days before the birth of this child. there was now no evidence at all of Turner syndrome inside the womb on this baby.
That started clicking in my head of, maybe I should take a test because this is like 3 times. I go home. I don't tell him because all the times we had false pregnancies and negatives, I'm like, it's probably me, I'm crazy. These sermons are just for somebody else, but I'm gonna take a test anyway. So I take a test and it's positive. And the time I took this test was like 3:30 in the morning because I'm going to work and he's in bed sleeping. And I just remember waking him up and saying, babe, I think I'm pregnant. So we go and I go to the doctors. I get a blood test to make sure that, it's right. And they tell me, well, because of your age, there's a lot of things to take in consideration. We want you just to be careful, and we're gonna take this test because you have a lot of options. You have options. We're not gonna say anything. We're gonna take this test and see, what happens, see the results. And honestly, I was nervous. At this point, I was scared, like, oh no, what if something's wrong? Well, we didn't tell anybody that we were pregnant because I wanted to know the results of this test. And Super Bowl Sunday, Pastor Phil gets up there and he shares a story about how his sister had this test done, the same test that we were having, and we were waiting on the results. And he said it word for word. They had given her a report that wasn't very good. They still relied on God, they prayed, and then at the end of his story, he shared how there was nothing wrong with the baby. And so I had to go up to him and tell him, hey, we didn't share this with anybody yet, but thank you for the story because that exact test is exactly what I was worried about, and so we didn't say anything. So everything just led up to what, from every Sunday up until that very test that we waited for. It was just like God was just talking to us through the microphone.
During this time, a grandson of ours was born with our oldest daughter. We were in the middle of coaching and we were starting our journey in youth ministry. And we sat back and thought, okay, God, this is what you meant for us as we were going to receive a child. When we started youth ministry, there was a few kids, and then we would connect with them, and then they would tell their friends, and more friends came, and it would just grow and grow, and we became a family. It was never just like a youth group or a club or a hangout. It became a solid family, from graduations with them to birthdays to pizzas on a Tuesday night. It grew as a family, so it really strengthened us. We enjoyed it. We really love our youth. We love our future, and those things helped us really grow.
Yeah, because we were able to pour into these kids like 100%, and as well as with our kids there, and it just helped us. That definitely carried us through.
One of the things that is present in every healthy, growing church is an investment in next-gen ministries, which includes all things kids, youth, and young adults. And so we wanted to make sure that we continually were investing in what next gen looks like.
Yeah, and so as we looked at this year and looking at how do we continue to make sure that, every generation is experiencing who God is, every generation is encountering Him for themselves, we began stepping out in these areas with new things, with strengthening things that have always been there. One of the things we started to do was reimagine what our kids space looked like to best serve our families for this season, and we began to redesign and relay out how our kids meet and connect so that they can have great small group and large group experiences, and so that you as a family can be well served in a convenient space. And I'm so excited that our youth began meeting on a weekly basis so that they have this constant connection together. They have this constant encounter with God and the ability to discuss what God is speaking to them for right here and for right now. Of course, our summer internship experience is always a fun and incredible time of watching leadership stand up in the next generation in such a really cool and powerful way. And our young adults have been meeting throughout the year and encountering the presence of God in such meaningful ways together. It's been so cool seeing God come alive in every generation.
Yeah. And in addition to all things next gen, we have increased our investment in support around couples. We know that a healthy church has healthy couples as well present in it. And so we've wanted to make sure that we have enrolled and trained more facilitators to be able to meet with couples, either people who are unmarried and getting married, or people who are married who want to enrich and strengthen their marriage. And so we have invested over 250 hours meeting with couples to ensure that our relationships are healthy at our core. And we know that as we continue investing in next gen, we know that as we continue investing in healthy couples, that we will find that this church is healthy at our core and that God is continuing to move here.
It's been such an incredible year, whether it was at the marriage date night or at one of the different youth nights or one of the many different special events that we had to connect with people in all kinds of stages of life. It's been an incredible time seeing the way that God comes and encounters us in every moment.
You know, right from the beginning of Scripture, we see in Genesis that God has called His people to be blessed. And we know that that blessing is not for us, but that blessing is so that we can bless other people. We have been blessed to be a blessing. And it talks about that all the way through Scripture. And it's true for us today that God has called us blessed. God has blessed us so that we can bless other people as well.
And as God began to speak this dream to us about seeing people reach out, seeing people's lives transform, we knew that it wasn't just for us. We knew that it wasn't even just for our church or for our region, but that really at the core of who we are, we also want to be people who are always part of launching into new territories, that we always are putting an investment into somewhere else that maybe we'll never experience for ourselves, but for the sake of seeing the gospel furthered, for the sake of seeing someone else's life changed through encountering Jesus. And that's how we became connected with Manny and Samira, young pastors in Aguas Calientes. They were part of the churches in Cornerstone, Mexico, and throughout Cornerstone, Latin America. And as we began speaking with Pastor Ophir, he connected us with them, and we were so connected to the resilience of their faith, that they had a heart to begin planting in 2020, and their initial plans were disrupted in the way that all of our lives were disrupted. But instead of sitting back and saying maybe we didn't hear from God, instead of sitting back and saying we can't do this thing that we thought that God was speaking to us, they let the dream still come alive, and they started launching their church through digital platforms. They started launching their church through digital means and began speaking into the territory of Aguas Calientes even while they couldn't physically get there. And then in 2021, they were able to move into the city and began holding in-person services, and you, church, have been able to be part of these initial days. As in 2021, we committed to begin to support them financially and help cover the cost of renting their first facility. And that'll continue into 2022 as we begin to see what God is doing come to life. We've been so encouraged seeing them have these in-person services, seeing the people there begin to invite their neighbors, their friends, and their coworkers. And so the number of people gathering is increasing. Begin to see the first people who have committed their life to Jesus make that first step of being baptized and going underwater and coming back up, and the congregation celebrating this moment with them. We are so honored to be part of what God is doing in the church in Aguas Calientes, and hope that He will always continue to allow us to be part of someone else's first steps in their dream of church planting.
And so we know that we are separated by over 1,000 miles from Manny and Samira. We know that we worship the same God.
That's right.
We know that we are separated from you right now, but we know that we worship the same God. And God has called us to be both local in our community and global as well.
Yeah.
And this church has always been and will always be a church who is globally focused, rooted deeply here in our community. And we love that we are both as a church.
You hear you're going to have something, and your mind immediately goes, it's going to happen right now. And time goes by, days, months, now we're into years, and you slowly forget about that and wonder, was it for someone else? But then when you start hearing messages again, and you see faith build and God putting kids in your life and other parts of the story in your life connecting dots, you start to wonder again. And for me, that vision, that memory started coming back from that day that we were prayed over. That January morning that she woke me up and said that she was pregnant, I kind of avoided it for a while. I did my morning deal. I got my coffee, I got my breakfast, made sure the other kids were around and ready to go, and I walked back into the bathroom and there was 2 tests that said positive. And man, I tell you what, the feeling, the emotion, the excitement to know that God does not forget about you. Take that 9-month journey and to see him born on August 25th was amazing. It's been a wild ride. It's been a rush. It's been words that emotions that I can't even explain. But our son is amazing. He's perfect. Every health problem that they said he could have had, that my wife could have had, never happened. He was completely guarded in the womb, and it's amazing, and I love every bit of it.
When I think about the beginning of this year, when we rolled out the mission statement that we declare Jesus everywhere, I think about how all-encompassing everywhere is. That of course we declare Jesus in our home and in our workplace and at church, but one of the things that we're able to do is to stay connected all the time through technology, through software, through social media, and all of those kinds of things. And I've been so encouraged hearing the stories of life transformation, of people connecting through social media, of people joining into services online, of how many people who have said yes to Jesus by clicking a button and saying, yes, I want to know more about this Jesus. I want to experience him in my life. I'm encouraged by how many people watch the services after the fact, about the fact that we can reach more people with the gospel through social media and through digital means than we are able to reach in person. I'm so encouraged by what God has been doing through the life of our church in technical means this year.
Yeah, and at the center of it all is our heart's desire that you would live a life of resilient faith, that you would live a life that reflects and honors the person that Jesus is, that you would encounter him and walk with him every day. And I just want to say to you that the beginning of that walk, the beginning of that journey is entering into relationship with Jesus. And so if you've never taken that first step to a resilient faith, that first step to a resilient life of saying, yes, Jesus, I want to walk with you. I want to follow you. I want to invite you to do that right now. I'm going to walk you through a really simple prayer you can repeat after me as we simply invite Jesus to be a person that you walk with every single day. And say, Jesus, I invite you into my life. I want to walk with you all the days of my life. I'm going to let go of a life lived for myself, and I'm going to take hold of a life walking with you. Help me to do it. Fill my heart, fill my mind, because today, Jesus, I say yes to you. If you just prayed that prayer for the first time, or if you just decided that you didn't want to walk into 2022 not walking with Jesus, I want to encourage you to tell somebody close to you, text a friend, text a neighbor, let us know, because we want to take your next step in a resilient faith with you.
Yeah, we know that this year has required resilient faith. It has required bold faith. But I just want to encourage you that when you have Jesus at the center of your life, when you have that resilient faith in Jesus, when you're walking with the power and you have the understanding of the significance of the Holy Spirit in your life, it changes everything. And so keep hoping, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep declaring Jesus everywhere, over yourself. Keep declaring Jesus over every situation that you're in, over every environment that you're in, over every relationship that you have. Declare Jesus everywhere.
One of the best ways to stand in your faith, to continue walking in resilient faith, is to make a weekly practice of attending a service together, of attending an experience together. If you're local, I want to invite you to come out on January 2nd. We're going to be kicking off the year talking about 365 days from now. What will your life look like 365 days from now? And then I'm really excited, and I want you to be part of our Vision Sunday on January 9th. We're kicking off a new series called Windward. It's going to be a great time together. So if you're in person, get to the building in person. If you aren't local, I would love for you to join us online as we keep leaning into what God is saying. And I wonder when we sit here this time next year, what we will be hearing God saying over your life.